Enrolling in the Academy is really simple. You'll just go to our website, wblinc.org/academy. And when you get here, you'll see our main page and you can click enroll and it'll take you to this form where you're just gonna fill this out. It'll take you about 5 minutes. Once you submit this, you're enrolled in the Academy and you'll receive an email from me so you can pick the classes you'd like to take and join our Academy family. So we're an after-school program rooted in hip hop. So we have a bunch of classes that you may find interesting. You can go right to our website and go to our classes tab and you'll see some of them, from performing arts like hip hop theater, spoken word, hip hop dance, some of our business classes that are like a boss and walk it like I talk it, which would be more arts management and entrepreneur based. And then we also have things like our music classes, MCing and rapping and beat production and DJing. You can go to wblinc.org/academy to enroll.
What's going on, world? It's yours truly, Mazi Mutafa, Executive Director of Words, Beats, and Life, coming to you live this week from Chicago, Illinois, where it's really beautiful here. The weather is lovely. I know it was raining in DC most of this weekend, and I'm super excited to have a conversation today with probably one of the rappers I've known the longest. The last couple of sessions, we've been able to talk to people that are artists in leadership. And so today we'll be kind of building on that theme. I'm going to be talking to a man that's known by many names. I think his mama called him Dathan. I know his uncle called him Nathan. I know his grandmama used to call him the handsome grandson. And people who usually yell out his name on stages call him Flex Mathews. I'm gonna call him Flex for today. What's going on, Flex?
Peace. How you doing, brother?
Man, I am good. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No doubt. Thank you for having me.
No doubt. So, sorry, I got distracted. Someone put a comment in the chat already. I'll bring it up on screen in a bit. So I'm not sure if you've had any time to watch any of our previous shows, Flex. I'm sure you haven't because you're too busy writing rhymes all the time, working on freestyles all the time, in the studio all the time, shooting photos all the time. You do lots of things all the time. And usually the interviews you're listening to, because you leave them up on the computer in that room that you're sitting on, are usually famous rappers. And we haven't had any of those on the show yet, so I'm sure you haven't been watching. But this is a show all about leadership. And it's about leadership for a bunch of different reasons, in part because of kind of conversations that I've had with you. Whenever you're in the office and I'm there, we have what I would say would be combative is too strong. We have brotherly disagreements about, what the weather is outside, what words mean, what day of the week it is, basic stuff that kind of is universally agreed upon. That's the stuff we disagree about. But I love you for that. And so because I thought it would be great to have a conversation with you about leadership. But before we get to that, I want to know, talk to us a little bit about some of the people that have had a major impact on just shaping you as a person, then maybe as an artist. But who are the people that have been like the major influences on your life? Shout out to Prowess the Testament who's tuned in listening.
Yeah. So you mean like, are you talking like just, I got that last part I missed. Is it shape me as an artist or as an individual or a person as a whole?
However you want to. I ask both. Okay. Individual and artist.
Well, I would always have to start with, the women in my family, primarily with my mother and my grandmother. My mother is the reason why I do so much charitable work. My father plays a big role in that as well, but my mother, I've seen her just be really selfless. My grandmother, her, just shaping me how to be a man. I always say this, my mother raised me, but my grandmother taught me how to be a man. My sister, when me and my brother were down on our luck, and we had to move, and she took us in her house and let us stay with her, even on to like my spiritual faith. My Aunt Bonnie, who's a bishop, I go to her church, and she really helped shape that as well. So really the women in my family have had a big influence on me from start to finish, just even how I got to this point. So I would say the Black women in my family had a huge impact on that. In terms of art, I I don't know. Outcast is the reason why I rap, but rapping and art are these journeys that I'm like continuously on. That multiple times I've tried to stop. I'm like, I'm done rapping. I'm done. I'm
Hold
not
up,
feeling.
hold up. You mean to tell me that Outkast is the reason why you rap,
Mhm.
and a huge part of the reason why I even started Words, Beats, and Life? Like Outkast is really, like, a lot of people, they point to like Public Enemy
Mhm.
or Tribe Called Quest or people from kind of earlier eras as their major influence. Like for me, the group that I really came into hip hop under for real was Outkast.
Mm.
And what is it about Outkast that has been a major influence for you?
Um, it's it. I mean, I don't really have an answer. It's just like I was listening to them so much. We were I think we were living in this really small place at the time. My folks had just got divorced, so we were living in this small place called Ogden, Kansas. It's like a trailer park place, not a trailer park town, but it's like it had a huge trailer park section there, and we lived in the trailer park section. And I just something about their sound just resonated with me. I have no idea. It was to this day, it's one of my favorite albums, and I love it sonically. And it's just listening to them made me think that I could rap for some weird reason. I, I figured I could do it. I don't know why I thought that I could do it, but it's one of those things where T-Pain said it right. T-Pain said this. He said every person should go into a room by themselves and do what they want to do as loud as they can when no one else is around, because you'll be surprised what you would do when you're in there. And I had a room by myself, and that was for the first time I had a room by myself when I started rapping and listening to Outkast. And I probably wouldn't have expressed or explored music in that regard if I hadn't had my own space. So it was a safe space. It was my room. Nobody was judging me in my house, and I created, and that's
Yeah, I
that.
love what Eric had to say. He said Outkast made poetry music blended with nostalgic sounds that allowed us to connect our emotions to our surroundings. Like I know for me, part of what I loved about and still love about Outkast
Mm,
is the fact that they could be political, but also still be party. Like they
yeah.
could do both. They could be fun and serious. They could drop a little bit of history or ask a question that
Mm,
in a context that's still, it doesn't feel like ultimately they were political without being preachy. Like you
yeah.
don't feel like you're getting knocked over the head with like, what you gonna do? But that question's gonna get asked, which
Yeah.
is like, like that line by Andre 3000 says, speech is only reaches those that already know about it. This is how we go about it. In that
Yeah.
humble mumble. Like this
Mm,
idea that is teaching without a classroom. Like part of what I've appreciated over the years in the way that you teach is like you're always like, I don't want this to feel like school. And I'm like, why
mhm.
can't it feel like school, but it'd be a good school? Like a school you actually want to be at, one that's actually invested in you, one that's not chasing you through the hallways asking where you supposed to be, when at least you're at this place where you should be safe. Like
Yeah.
so with that being said, you talked a little bit about Outkast as an artistic influence.
Mhm.
Um, because this is a show about leadership, I wonder who are the leaders in your life? Who are the leaders in your life? And then, yeah, who are the leaders in your life? I'll come to my follow up after that.
Um, the leaders in my life. I guess the leaders in my life would be I definitely look to a lot of DC elder statement, like Kimon Freeman. Like he's someone I hold in really high regard. I like what he stands for. I like his extremely pro-Black message. I like his angry Black man in therapy. You know, I'm not going to disrespect it and say it's a punchline, but his message, his precursor to anything that he's doing, right? Because it's just very honest. Like I said, the women in my family are big leaders, and even you, Mozzie, I look at you as a leader for sure. I feel like you're a person who continuously you put your money where your mouth is. You stand by what you preach. You're not afraid to put yourself out there. And you're continuously letting people know, like, yo, I don't have the answer, but I'm trying to surround myself with the people who can help me find the answer. And I think ultimately that's a hallmark of a good leader, is someone who admits, like, yo, I don't have it all, but I'm hiring y'all, so maybe we can figure it all out together.
Yeah, now I definitely know you've never watched the show, because one of the things I say every episode is I am not a leader. I am a manager. I am an employer. I am a student. Sometimes I'm a teacher, but none of those things to me, none of those things to me or for me are leadership. I appreciate lifting up your aunt.
No leader says he's a leader. No, only the people who say they're leaders are dictators and people who have extremely big egos.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that Jason normally says. I mean, I appreciate the compliment, but the only reason why I like to parse the language, just to be like, you don't have to be a leader to get things done. You could be a manager and make a difference in the world. You could be a general. You could be lots of different titles that are not leader. And part of the reason why I push that is because I think sometimes some of us are waiting for these leaders that are going to take us to some place that we don't know how to get to ourselves. And I'm like, we already have we have the managers, the employers, the artists, the creatives, like all these terms that are not leader. But I wonder, even though you just said the only person that calls himself a leader is a dictator, do you consider yourself to be a leader? Are there people who look to you for leadership, for guidance, for direction?
I wouldn't call myself a leader. I would feel more comfortable calling myself a mentor. I feel like that's a better title for me, because I'm a better mentor than I am a lot of things. I enjoy talking to young people. I enjoy talking to young artists. I enjoy sharing my platforms. I enjoy sharing my stages with young artists. I enjoy sharing my information, and whatever I can. But I've never been one to keep like my influence, my contacts or my connections. Like, I'm just very free sharing with a lot of things because someone shared with me, and I think it's really I'm shaped by this mindset. Like when I officially moved back to DC in 2002, like there was this kind of like thing amongst the hip hop scene, where like people were working together, or they were working together, or we work together here but we don't work together there. And I was just very much on some like, that's stupid. If you book shows and I'm trying to rhyme and you looking for MCs, like, then let me rock, So, or if you're a promoter and this person has an account and I promote and I got legs and you don't got the time, like, let's work together. And it was always these loopholes and things that people had to jump through, and I just never really understood that. So if I am a leader, it's just because I'm just trying to share and connect people as much as possible.
I mean, welcome, Dr. Jason Nichols. No, we did not coordinate our color scheme for today. Glad you didn't wear no glasses or shave your head, but appreciate the sweater for the sweater weather happening in the DMV. Flex Mathews, I wonder, do you think that there is something? Well, two things. A lot of times when I talk about leadership on this show, to be very transparent, I frame it around my own understanding of leadership, mostly influenced by um, the Quran and by the Bible. So this idea of kind of like Moses or Aaron or Job, like all these people, these figures that are depicted as kind of leaders or examples within a scriptural context. I wonder, for you as a devout Christian, how do you feel like your faith impacts the way you think about leadership in general in the abstract, but also how you think about your kind of leadership?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I'm very much Christian, 100%. And because I'm a Christian and because I read the Bible daily, it shapes how I approach situations, how I treat people, how I treat myself. Um, but it's very much a big part of just my walk of life. And as I as even as I grow and I'm always learning about myself. But yeah, it's a real big thing. Like how I ride around the neighborhood and pat on my bike and I pass out sack lunches, right? But that's influenced by my mother, who's a devout Christian, and my father, who's a devout Christian. And this thing that even though they see it as doing God's work, and it is God's work, I see it as God's work, but on a not so God work level, I see it as community building and connecting with my community. And I feel like amongst leadership and things of that nature, community building is important and connecting with the people in your community are important. And like the people who I'm like in my neighborhood, Columbia Heights is a huge Hispanic demographic. And those they don't know my name. We don't I speak English, they don't. But I have Google Translate, so I'll go out there and pass out hoodies and sack lunches and I'll pull up on Google Translate before I go, would you like some prayer? And it's like, yeah. And they don't say yeah, they say see. And I'll have some prayer with them and they just know me as the guy who just shows up with, stuff to help out. But yeah, community building and charity is God's work, but I see it as a very important cornerstone of leadership. But yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, how the Bible influences me and how I move in terms of leadership.
One more question before Jason jumps in, because I know he's still getting warmed. I see him over there drinking off camera, getting his hot toddies on. I think the hot toddies don't have no liquor in them, so that seems like a fair suggestion. Here's the last one before we get to Jason.
Okay.
How has being a part of the hip hop community and the way leadership works in hip hop communities informed the way you think about leadership?
Oh, I guess OGs, right? Like OGs, and I feel like that term gets, it's people treat it as a laughable statement sometimes, but I think it's a very real thing. I have so much respect for the leaders or the bricklayers in music and in hip hop for sure, especially DC. Because I started rapping in DC officially in I think it's 98, but I came back in '02 and started my real journey. And the Cold Highs and the Opus Occupants and the Infinite Loops and the Amphibians and the Anonymous Crews the Anonymous Crews and all these people who were a part of this scene who already had something going on when I came back. And I'll always salute those people and always try to hold those people in high regard and try to model myself after their movements because I felt like this is a great scene. And if I'm going to be in this scene, like I'm a guest in this scene and I need to be respectful. And because I'm a church kid, very big on respect. I always try to go about it as respectful. And as I move forward in hip hop, in DC hip hop especially, I try to be as respectful as possible. Yeah.
Well, this is like you know, I saw you from your infancy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I saw you from freestyling at Unknown's crib, and me and you and C's Mike's and Cypher Divine.
Yeah.
I remember, and oh, what's my man's name who had the glasses?
Caxton.
Yeah, Caxton. Yo, he's dope, man. I thought he was dope. Shout out to Caxton wherever he's at. I wanted to you know, I remember those days, and then you moved away to South Dakota.
Yeah.
And there was a time like we'd be like, yo, what's up with Flex? Where's Flex? They'd be like, yo, you know, back then we would call you by your government too. So we were like, yo, you know, and they'd be like, oh, he's in South Dakota. I was like, he's in South Dakota? Is he like a Native American or something? But I was wondering, how did you get to South Dakota, and what was it like, you know, in terms of, you know, hip hop, and also, you know, in terms of being an African American in a state that doesn't have very many African Americans?
Facts. Once again, you know, just like the term OG, I feel like the term culture shock, right, gets laughed at and taken for granted. But it was just that. It was definitely a culture shock. I had first lived in South Dakota in 95 to 97. And I had moved to Maryland, in DC and Maryland, from 97 to 99. And then I moved back to South Dakota. But it's just a culture shock. There were, at the time in 95, when I first got there, in 97, like these were like my big rap years, big influences years, things where I was like learning about myself and finding my favorite rap groups and favorite rap albums. A place that had no BET, you know? So all my hip hop was really based off of BET. And I was fortunate enough to find this real, like, small group of white kids that had all types of rap, like just all kinds of rap, right? I had never listened to anything outside of BET, right? And my music was shaped by BET. So the stuff that I would hear on Rap City, that's the stuff that I would buy. But these white kids were into, like, they bought albums and of people that I would never listen to. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, they were listening to The Shining. And I was just buying singles and stuff that had instrumentals on it. Because to me, I'm like, I'm trying to rap and I don't got no beats. So why would I buy this album and they ain't got no beats on it? So they were the first people I met that had full albums, like consecutive multiple albums. And I was just like very influenced and taken back by all these white kids that had all this hip hop. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. Like, you know, but also it taught me that they didn't have a lot of hip hop that I had access to, you know, like in hip hop, like if you're just buying albums, you're not buying something that might have a Pete Rock remix on the on the B side, you know, or the Pete Rock version might be the version that's the video to, but it's not the version that's on the album. So it was just a big culture shock and a big shift, but also a learning about myself, because I moved to this place that I thought didn't have hip hop, but it had a lot more hip hop than I anticipated. And you know, in terms of the Black struggle there, which was definitely a struggle for sure. There's a lot of Africans there, you know, and a lot of Sudanese, a lot of Ethiopian, Southern Sudanese, a lot of Somalians, and it's very much the tribal side of things. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the tribal side of the Sudan and of the Ethiopian and of the Somalians. So even me seeing that is much different than the Ethiopians that I came here. And they're like, they have that Ethiopian culture, but in South Dakota, they seem to be very more tribal and have more of that like the Sudanese in South Dakota, they still wear their tribal marks, right? And they're and even when I was 15, they wore tribal marks. And even as I go back to visit my mother as a 42-year-old man, there's still new Sudanese people wearing their tribal marks. So it's just very different in terms of that regard. But I say it all the time. Growing up in America, Africans were, Sally Struthers and all these Feed the Children Foundation commercials. That's what I saw as African. And when I moved to South Dakota, that was my first time seeing African. My mother's a light skinned woman. That was my first time seeing Africans that were light skinned. And I was like, yo, stop lying. Like, like literally having a debate with this girl. She's like, I'm African. I was like, no, you're not. Like, how you African? Like, you light skinned. Like, just this total, like, shaped by TV mindset. And it really, that's the first time I really questioned what I saw on TV. Like, when I was 15 in South Dakota, I'm like, this girl is the same complexion of my mother, and she's light skinned. Not only is she light skinned, her mama light skinned, and they talk in a language that I've never heard of. Like, this is so, yeah, culture shock and various things happened when I moved to South Dakota.
Was there anything that move taught you about leadership? Like, you had to come into a new environment, where culturally you didn't necessarily directly fit in. Did that teach you anything about the formation of a community, community formation? Because you had to come in and kind of formulate a community out of hip hop or out of whatever interest you had. And then did it teach you anything about leadership?
That living there taught me how to speak out, really, because I would get into debates and arguments with teachers frequently. You feel me? And I felt it was just, they didn't understand me as a Black kid. And there's moments where I had to, like a lot of moments where I had to stand up. And that's not really who I am. I'm like, hey, let's rap, let's kick it, let's crack jokes, let's joke. But there's moments where I had to stand up, and and I had to stand up for my little brother. I'm like, hey, don't talk to him like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, really had to, like, kind of puff my chest out sometimes. But that was the first time I began to speak out and stand, I guess, kind of formulate my own personality. In terms of community, listen, I always got to go back to my mother. Like, I seen this woman give her bed away, and seen her give her to a Sudanese family who didn't have anything. And I seen her give her half her wardrobe away, and who to a woman who didn't have much. And she told the Sudanese woman told her, like, in the immigration office, other Africans were telling them, stay away from the African Americans, they're trouble, this, that, and the third, blah, 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 blah. And she said, basically, she said to my mother, you're not like anything that they told me. And that just kind of shaped my mind when she said that, like, I have to be better. You know what I'm saying? Like, even at that age, that's when I decided I got to stop cussing so much. You know what I'm saying? I have to stop using the N-word so much. That's a constant struggle for me, but I'm also always constantly trying to battle that, and watching my mother interact with other people and her charitable works, like, always, it's just, I got to step my game up. And even when I go back to visit her, seeing what she's doing, I'm like, I got to do better. I got to do better. I think my mother's an excellent leader, even though she doesn't like to call herself a leader. I think she's an excellent leader for sure.
It's funny. I was gonna jump in and be like, "You losing that battle, bro."
I know. But I'm trying. Every time I say it, the N-word, like, I hear it, and I'm like, yo, you gotta do better. Every time I say it.
Because for maybe like the last 3 or 4 months, every time Flex sees me, he's like, "What's going on, Black man?" And I'd be like, "Hello, Flex. How are you?" But now I understand that part of this must be the influence of kNOw, because I was on I was on a bus ride with him, and I realized I had actually asked him because he always does introduce himself as an angry black man in therapy. And so when we got off of this bus ride we were on, I was like, "Are you actually in therapy?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, cool." Because then it doesn't bother me that you say it all the time because it's actually true. But if it was just like a shtick, if it was just supposed to be something for shock, it'd be like, man, that's corny. But because it's real, like he's actually dealing with, the things. But it's interesting though, right? Because he literally describes himself, and I'm only going back to this because I want to bring it back to you, saying that he's an influence to you in terms of being someone whose unapologetic love for Black people is something that you admire. Um, what do you think? What do you think? This will be the dumbest question you get in 2022. But what do you think Black people have to be angry about at this point? I told you. Let's see. What do you? Because if you're an angry Black man in therapy, what is it? Because I'll be honest. I see injustice and I work against it. I'm not angry about it. I'm motivated by it. Because to be honest, I think that anger can be motivating for some people. For me, the way I think about it, it's more corrosive. It actually does more damage to you than the people that you're upset with. So I would never describe myself, grown Mozzie, as angry. But in college, my nickname was Militant Mozzie. But I was militant because literally I wore fatigues. But I wore fatigues because I was poor. Someone gave me that jacket. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have anybody buying me clothing. So someone gave me her ex-boyfriend's fatigue jacket, and I was growing locks. I was like, oh, he's militant. I had a little Black Power fist. I mean, I get it. It wasn't an unearned description, but the way that I think of militancy today, nah, bro, I wasn't militant. I wasn't trying to truly spark a revolution. I wasn't prepared to go out and shoot some people down in the street for the things that I saw as wrong. I saw myself as a college student who was trying to work to be a part of changing systems that negatively impact my community. I don't think of that as militant. I think of that as strategic. I think of that as intentional. I think of other words. This is why and it's probably because I was an English major, but the words matter. Because all those words have meaning. Like you said, I'm not a leader, talking about yourself. You said I'm more of a mentor. And there are people who we've interviewed who are like, mentorship is leadership. And I push back because, like you said, you mentor, meaning you influence, you suggest, you provide opportunities, you share what you got. Those can be characteristics of a leader. But to the question that got your eyes bugged out, what do Black people have to be, or what does he or you as a Black man have to be angry about?
Angry about. I don't think I'm angry about much. I only get angry about overt things, like this police officer, right? And I hate to be cliche and go to the police, right? But this police officer, this woman, was asking me questions, I had a trench coat on. I had a really big coat on in I think it was in September, a couple years ago, maybe 4 years ago. But she felt it wasn't cold enough for a trench coat. So she was asking me, why do I have that coat on in this weather and blah, 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 and so she asked me for my ID. I give it, I got a gig that I'm going to at 18th Street Lounge, and I'm just trying to keep it moving. And she wanted to frisk me. I said no. She wanted to bring a dog around, and I said no. And so she got mad, but ultimately she left. But before she left, she said, and I'm 2 blocks from my house, 3 blocks. And before she left, she says, I don't want to see you in this neighborhood again. And I'm like, you just saw my ID. What are you talking? That's the type of stuff that makes me upset. The overt things, the ridiculous things, what are you talking about? Right? This is my neighborhood. So if you do see me in this neighborhood, it's going to be a problem because I live here. I think Black people have a ton of things to be upset about. Like, there's a whole bunch. Like, even as I look at my neighborhood changing, just like, I have some neighbors that are okay, right? Like two neighbors that are okay. The other ones are definitely like the purse clutching types. And I'm just like, why you move here if you're nervous or you scared, right? I think that a lot of Black people, a lot of you know anger within themselves, things we have to work on within our own community and within our own selves. That's why I like Kamon's Angry Black Men in Therapy, because I feel like now we are at a place where Black people are looking at mental health as a real thing and looking at therapy as a viable source of healing, right? So,
As a side note, though, he's been saying that longer than it's been okay to be in therapy. He's been saying that for almost 10 years. So, like, therapy as a thing that Black people talk about as an acceptable thing to participate in, I feel like that's like right before the COVID era, and mostly beginning with Black women. I don't know a ton of Black men, particularly, that describe themselves as participating in therapy. So I just wanted to say, like, even though you're right that it's a thing that's becoming more acceptable, he was doing that before. He was doing that back when he did like Prison Poetry, which was a play he did as a part of the Hip Hop Theater Festival.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody chimed in and said, and this type of behavior should not be acceptable, should not be tolerated. I'm guessing they're talking about the way that police officer treated you. And the irony of that is she don't live in your neighborhood. Like, what you doing in my neighborhood, officer?
She don't. She does not.
I almost wish you had done that, but I'm glad you didn't because you're still here and free. So, Jay, did you want to jump back in?
Yeah. So, one thing I'll say is about the therapy tip. Number one, I know a lot of Black men in therapy. You know what I mean? I know quite a few. And the sad part is right now, the way our system is, a lot of people have BS insurance and can't find a therapist, and don't have the money. And the other element is after COVID, therapists were in such high demand that it was hard to actually get a therapist. I tried and couldn't find a therapist. Even with the telemedicine, there were a lot of people who couldn't find therapists, but my doggone near my whole household is in therapy. So I don't see anything wrong with it.
I love it.
But I wanted to, also in terms of like the anger element, I'm wondering, what is it that motivates you? I'm not a believer in motivation, honestly. I think you're either
I feel you.
I think motivation is, because motivation is fleeting, it comes and goes.
It's like a sugar high.
Right, exactly. I think you're either committed.
Yeah.
There are people who are motivated, like, I'm motivated to work out this week, and then next week they're not motivated.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, what is it that made you committed to the things that you do? So that goes for the charitable work you do. I know your mother was an influence, but what keeps you committed to that? What keeps you committed to writing rhymes now at 42 years old? A lot of, I'm not going to lie, my pen has collected a little bit of dust. I'll be thinking of dope rhymes in my head and I'll be saying them in the mirror, but like, I'm not as motivated to go lay stuff down as I once was. And I'm wondering, like, what keeps you in it? What keeps you committed to hip hop in the way that you've been?
I just feel like I have something to say, and I feel like I'm not done saying what I want to say. And I guess when I'm done saying everything that I have to say, I'll stop rapping, maybe I'll dive into something else. Maybe I'll become a hip hop photographer, perhaps, right? But I just feel like I'm not done, and I just feel like there's so much that I have to tap into in terms of hip hop, in terms of charity. Like that'll never stop because people never stop needing. You can never people there's always going to be some type of help there. Um and I'm real big on charity, but I'm like huge on charity in my neighborhood. Like I'm talking like a 10-block radius, 5-10 block radius, like let's help these people, right? Just because I see these people consistently. I see these people on a regular basis. Like I know my man didn't have money to buy his son shoes, right? So with the Handsome Grandson Foundation that I did, right? I went and bought my homie shoes for his son, right? Like I know the struggle of there's a lady that hangs out in the front of the corner store. Her name is Audra, right? She's got her problems and things of that nature, but she don't cause no problems, right? So when I see her, I say, Audra, what's up? You need something out the corner store? Yeah, I get her something out the corner store. Then I'll offer her some prayer. Next thing you know, I see Audra all the time now, right? And last time I seen her, she had a cheeseburger, and she asked me, "Yo, you want this burger, sweetheart?" I'm like, "No, I'm good, sweetheart, but I appreciate that. Thank you." People, it's never going to stop. It's never going to be enough. You always kind of have to. And this is just me. How can I make my neighborhood a little better? How can I reach out a little better? There's a guy named Tragic. His rap name is Tragic. His real name is Dre. And he gave me the greatest compliment I've ever had in my whole entire life, right? Dre was legitimately selling drugs, like literally selling crack on the corner of 14th and Oak, which is where I live at. And but he rapped. He was always rapping. He's a great freestyler, amazing. I used to be like, "Yo, bro, I was like, "So what you doing? You gotta get on the internet." No, I don't really get on the internet like that, dog. I was like, "No, you gotta get on the internet because that's where the beats is. You're gonna see other rappers. You're gonna do it, And I will always, try to get him to like get on the internet. Then he got on the internet. He was like, "Yo, bro, like it's mad people on the internet. It's mad beats, the whole deal, right?" I gave him his first show on U Street at the Velvet Lounge, right? Just inviting him out. He a youngin' from the hood, rough around the edges, but I'm just like, I'm telling him, you got gifts. Just keep coming out. We was past, here and there. Neighborhood got gentrified, so he moved. But we would cross paths here and there, have these great conversations. And then maybe about a year ago, 2 years ago, he was like, "Yo, bro, like," he said, "if it hadn't been for you, man, I might still be on the corner, like selling drugs or selling crack. Like, really, you coming out there to talk to me about music and trying to take music more seriously really is why I started taking music more serious. If you hadn't, because nobody around me," he said, "nobody around me was, knew nothing about no music or no art, but you really, he said, I can really credit you with the fact that I stopped selling drugs. It's because you kept telling me to take music more serious." And that single-handedly is the greatest compliment I've got as a rapper, as a mentor, and as a human being. Yeah.
But is that leadership, do you think?
I mean, that's helping the homie. That's seeing the young blood out there saying like, "Yo, you got gifts, and I know you love this music more than what you're doing. I know it."
You don't think like the older gods, the big homies, like isn't that leadership? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
yes, it's leadership.
You're guiding people. You're giving people options. You're giving them new ideas. You're giving them a roadmap. It's like if we were walking. Mazi brought up Moses. What did Moses do? He gave people the
Moses. Sorry, so Moses literally went and advocated on behalf of people with Pharaoh, and then when Pharaoh, after God punished Pharaoh, said, "Take those people out. You can take them." And then those people picked up all they had and followed him out into the wilderness.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't say, hey, folks, there's wilderness out there. You should go and do it. He said, follow me. God has given me a vision. Let's go. And they said, we will follow you, Moses.
Right. So he in other words, just like, would you consider Jesus to be a leader? Like, he set a path for people to follow, and they followed him. You know what I mean?
But you also realize that Jesus literally said,
even if there's not a physical path,
he literally says to people that become his disciples, put down your burdens and follow me. Literally says, follow me. Not watch what I'm doing and be inspired by it. Or, you know, I've heard like,
but that's what Flex
the way Flex described himself was perfect. He was a mentor.
But that's what Flex said, like, yo, there's a better way. Here's the way to do it. He gave the roadmap. He literally said, this is the way to go. You need to get on the internet. You need to be rapping. He gave him his first show. Yeah. Like, he literally is setting the man up for a different way and a different path.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. Now, again, I'm not comparing Flex to Jesus. Let me be clear. Or Moses or anybody else biblical. But what I am saying is that, metaphorically, he gave him the pathway to a different way of doing things, a different existence. And the young man had to take it, and he did. Shout out to that young man, Dre. You need to send us his music too. But
I can do that.
So I think if we're saying, because I know Flex is a Christian, we're all believers. If we're saying that God, gives people these leadership responsibilities, and their responsibility is to give people, a pathway to a better existence, then that's kind of what's happened here. That's what Flex did.
The only thing is like and it's interesting you put it that way, because I never would have put it that way, but it's true. But the thing is, when I was telling him he needed to get on the internet, I was still very green. I was still figuring it out myself. I think I was maybe like 24, right? He was like, I think just getting out of high school, so I was still very green, but I was just telling him the information that I was getting from U Street, that I was getting from various rap battles and communities and things of that nature, and bringing all that stuff back to him, like, yo, you need to check this out, check that out. You got to do this, you got to do that. And my mindset wasn't, I was trying to be this OG or leader. I just knew that he had bars for days. And I knew that he just needed a little bit of guidance. So he needed to be deflected in another direction. And I knew that even at the age of 24, I'm like, you just need to go over here just a little bit, not even a lot, just a little bit. If I could just get you over here a little bit, you're gonna take this serious. Now he does show. I didn't even know it, but he grew up with XO, and now him and XO do shows together all the time. They did an album together, did a project together, and I'm just like, okay, cool, Young Blood, you're doing your thing. So I just, I'm just real happy for him. But yeah, that is, my first mentorship, I guess. But I definitely, I look at him when I see him, and I'm just like, I feel good about that. Like I had a hand in that. I seen him selling crack. I seen him, like my eye, hand to hand distribute, seeing him. And now he's so far removed from that, making music. He's got a healthy relationship. He's got a job. He's just doing all kinds of shows and stuff. I'm like, I feel bad. I feel good about that. Like, I would wear that as a badge for sure.
Well, speaking of influence, Jay, we have a couple people in the comments. Dior and Doomy both responded to you saying that your pen is getting dusty. Dior was like, "Oh no, dust is awful," and Doomy said he agreed. Doomy right, said he agreed. Dust that joint off, brother. Lyrical therapy, for real, for real.
Shout out to Doom, to Dior. Doom, I want to just give him a shout because he He's always doing his like freestyles in traffic. I don't know if y'all seen it.
I love those. I love those, yo.
I'll be watching those.
I love those.
I'll be watching those too. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And that's the dope part about the community that I want to give us all props here. The community of like I guess the early 2000s that we built in DC in hip hop is we were all fans of each other.
Yeah.
We all had each other's albums and each other's singles, and we were, you know, the rest of the world may not have been big fans, but we were listening to each other's music and getting inspired from that. And I remember the first time I heard, you know, I didn't know about Zimbabwe Legit, you know, back in the 90s.
Don used to tell me about them all the time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like, you know, I mean, you know, listening to music, going over to Odyssey's crib and listening to music, going into Unknown's crib, like the community that we built. And, you know, in terms of a leaderless community, I don't think there was a leader. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, there wasn't.
Oh, shout out to my man. I guess, is he going by Wibbit Wabbit still now?
I don't know.
You know who I'm talking about though. K Beta.
Oh, K Beta.
He was going by Wibbit Wabbit for a little while. I think his kids gave him that name.
K Beta. I love that dude, man.
You know, I remember when K Beta was locked up, we were still rocking his old freestyles. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just like it was there was a lot of love in that community. There wasn't I don't remember there being any kind of beef or anybody not liking anybody. And even if you didn't like the person, you still rocked their music.
Yeah. Or you could at least battle it out. Like
Oh, those Erico days were so incredible.
Yeah, man.
And you know, I was scared to freestyle. I was never a freestyle kind of guy. I was like,
but your pen was great. But you did it, and your pen was. I thought your pen was real solid, bro. Like I enjoyed your bars, man.
Yeah. Oh, my pen is nice. Don't undersell me.
That joint is dusty. That joint is dusty. Yeah. Like here's a question though, right? So part of the thing I say is that the hip hop is a leaderless community in the sense that there's not a person who we point to as the leader. Of course, there are leaders, there are crews, there are etc. But particularly because you talked about the importance of showing reverence to the people that already did that work. I know, you know, I've witnessed, I've been the target of, or the foil of some of the folks that consider themselves and other people consider to be bricklayers. I wonder what you think about kind of the role of kind of hip hop's local pioneers in terms of being leaders within the community, whether through what it is they created or the personalities of those artists. Like, how do the people who helped to build the DC scene impact what it is today? You follow my question?
Like, you mean like their role? Like, what do you mean by their role? Like, what they?
So it's like. So like one of the people, even though I know she's not from DC, one of the people who gets a lot of credit for work that happened in DC is Tony Blackman, who came to DC to go to Howard University.
Yeah.
But she's not from DC, but she had a major impact, particularly with some of those artists that you and Jay were describing. And so in that sense, you could probably consider her and the work of Freestyle Union a kind of bricklayer in the scene. How did the people that helped build the DC scene make it what it is? And how it is, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, they took those arrows, right? Like, they took those arrows, so people like me could be here. Like, so, like the shows at the Black Cat, you know, these shows that were bridging the gaps, like Head Rock and Priest the Nomad and Storm the Unpredictable. Like, these people took those arrows that I can build my little TP. Like I'm a firm believer in that. And because they took those arrows, I'm just a real big, like, I feel like I'm here because of that, right? And if they didn't, my journey in this hip hop world in terms of DC hip hop would be a lot tougher and a lot harder. Tony Blackman is definitely a bricklayer in DC for sure. I would, and I would argue anybody down, to my shoes and socks, who said that she wasn't. But also, I guess if you talk about the role of the bricklayers, I don't know. I feel like they've done their part, right? If they choose to do more, then they choose to do more, right? I'm a firm believer in, I don't like the idea of assigned responsibility from others, if that makes sense. Like you're a bricklayer, so you should be doing this. Or you're a rapper, so you should be doing this. You should be doing that. You should be doing that. Because people come to art for various different reasons, like various. So like a lot of people have come to art, because, they had problems at home. They were disrespected, they were abused, or whatever the case. So art was their escape. You're right. Art's their escape. And now like something happens and they be like, oh, you should be a part of this. You should be a part of that. And they're like, yo, bro, I'm just trying to stay floating. I'm just trying to keep focused. Like this art is helping me stay focused. Like, so I'm not a big fan of assigned responsibility. Or you should be doing this. You should be a part of that. But if they pick up that mantle and they charge forward with their platform, with their energy, with their focus, with their words, then I'm for that. And I think that's super dope. And I think that's very important. But I don't like assigned responsibility to artists. I feel like that's stepping into celebrity worship and you should be doing this. I'm like, this dude isn't a politician, he a comedian. Like let him be a funny dude, you know what I'm saying? And look to the politicians. I don't know. That's just something I kind of think about.
So as we're kind of coming to a close here, Flex, I want to ask you, what do you think is in the future for you? And what do you think is in the future for DC hip hop? Particularly because there is no leader. What direction is the scene gonna go? And where do you see the scene in like 5 and 10 years and your role within it?
My role within it. I don't know where the scene is going because like for the first time, I feel like for the first time, not even for the first, like DC, like there's amongst the young generation, there is a DC rap style, right? There's a DC rap style amongst this younger generation that is on a world scale. That's on a world like famous, quote unquote, famous rappers. Like he's rapping in the DC style. He's using DC lingo. So that's kind of cool to see, right? But you're always going to have this split in terms of, oh, that's not what I'm from. Cats like I'm from DC, but I don't rock with that. That's not my style. Or I'm from a different side. I don't rock that. That's not my style. Hopefully, I would like to see more unity in the DC scene, kind of like Texas, kind of like Atlanta, kind of like Minneapolis, because I really feel like, and maybe I'm biased, but I've toured around the world. I've toured around the US, and I mean it when I say DC has some of the dopest rappers I've ever met in my whole entire life. And I really feel if the community would just get together, right? And, do what Paul Wall and Mike Jones did. Paul Wall was like, I'm selling out shows in my spot. You come to my spot, open for me. And Mike Jones, you selling out shows in your spot. So when you sell out a show, I'll come open for you, and vice versa. And they just kept doing that. And they both got major label record deals, and the rest is history. You feel me? So I would like to see DC do that in 5 to 10 years. My role in it, man, whatever I can do to help, whatever I can do to be a part of it, whatever I can do to, I'm always offering young artists free photo shoots, whatever I can do to help. Like, I just want to be that person. I just want to help. I ain't got to be the guy. I don't have to be the leader. Like, what if I can help somebody lead? I'm down with that. If I can just help, I'm cool with that.
You know what's funny? We got a little bit of pushback from Dior. Not even pushback, just asking a different question. I put it on the screen from Dior Doward, who asked, she said, I appreciate that. But where's the collective accountability or shared vision for the roles we play in our liberation, or are we detached from hip hop and the art form now? And I feel like you answered the question without even knowing that question was raised, at least in your own way. I think another answer to that question, Dior, is being answered by another Dior, that is Dior Ashley Brown, who's hosting the DC Music Summit on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, October 14th, 15th, and 16th at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. That Dior is making power moves. Flex is actually going to be at that on a panel we're hosting called Hip Hop Futures Part 3. That's going to be focused on technology. But I think that part of the reason why we do this show is so I can argue with Jason about why he's wrong, and of course I'm right. But also to push back on our shared understanding. Like, if what do words mean? What do actions mean? From our own points of view, and how is it that we can use what it is we know and what it is we have to make the world better in the ways that we want to. And I think at the end of the day, that's why Jason keeps coming back, even though I'm always like, no. He comes back because it's like, well, we have a different point of view, and I respect yours, and I know you respect mine, and so we can have that debate. But I think it's important that folks like you, Flex, who are thought leaders at a super grassroots level, but also on your internet game with all of your hashtag Flex says. If you want to know what Flex thinks, go on whatever your favorite social media platform is and look up the hashtag Flex says.
Says Flex.
Says Flex. I have dyslexia. So I reversed it. And you can see his point of view. The summit, to the best of my knowledge, Dior, this is a question that just got asked, is it virtual? To the best of my knowledge, it is going to be in person. And there could be some virtual aspects of it. I don't know. I know we're planning to film the panel discussion we're hosting, so we can actually make that virtual later. But I know that the Dior Ashley Brown is really trying to get people back into space, to be around each other, to build community. For some of the reasons that Jason has said on previous shows about why his pen is so dusty, because he's not going into studios to be able to collaborate with people. So like thinking about how it is that we make space and how we take advantage of spaces that exist in ways that are safe. I want to thank you, Flex, for taking time on a Sunday. Go ahead, Jay.
Can I just say one thing about the Pioneers thing? First of all, Tony Blackman is definitely a DC hip hop pioneer. I don't care where she was born or whatever. Came and she contributed a whole lot to this, and she gave a lot of people whose freestyle was kind of weak, like me, an opportunity to actually build our skills up. And the other thing is, a lot of pioneers that we have in DC don't sit there and talk about how great of pioneers they are. And if you're one of those guys who sits there and is always talking about how somebody owes you something, I don't feel like I owe you anything personally. You know what I mean? So to all of the humble people that kind of set the way that Flex is doing, Flex did for Dre, and the way that people did it for us, like putting us on shows and letting that carpet out for us. I definitely want to say thank you, because like Jay said, thank God for hip hop. I'll be in a bizox, you know what I'm saying? So I definitely thank them for that. Thank them for that community. It changed my life.
Sure.
But I also, if you're expecting a thank you, then I'm not giving it to you, because you don't deserve it, in my opinion. Says Seuss.
Well, Flex, thanks so much for joining us.
I think y'all for having me, man. I hope I was a good guest,
He was all right.
Sometimes I worry about me answering questions and I'm like not the most insightful person, perhaps, but I do my best, though.
I was more worried about your hat because your face was covered for most of
Oh.
the show.
Why don't you say something?
Because it's you in charge of your image, brother. Like, look at Jason. Jason got like 5 lights on him right now, glowing.
I know.
I got
sun
one
on my forehead. That's the worst part.
I would have done this. Why don't you say something?
Noted for next time. Thank you, brother.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, Jay. So that's episode number 11 in the books. I'm enjoying this, especially because folks like Flex, continue to add to our lexicon of leadership. The idea of mentoring leadership, which was something that our fellow co-host Prowess the Testament described as a kind of leadership, and you affirmed on this show that that's a kind of leadership that we continue to add to the lexicon of what leadership means, how it plays out in the world, and how it is that people who are part of our circles play leadership roles in our community and the impact of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Flex is such an example of, what we talked about last week, which is servant leadership. And he definitely is a servant of the community. And he pays it forward all the time. Whether we want to call him a leader or not, that's up to the viewers and what they decide. But he's certainly been a servant and helped his community, whatever community that is, whether it's Columbia Heights or whether it's the hip hop community.
No doubt. Jay, thanks so much for tuning in to contribute to this conversation per usual. All right. I'm Mazi Mutafa, Executive Director of Words Beats Life. This is episode number 11 of No New Leaders. And that was Flex Mathews and Dr. Jason Nichols. Catch you next Sunday.
God bless the cipher, the rotation. God bless the beatboxer's lungs, amen for breath control, the smiles that cry open faces when flow goes unbroken, and the smoke. To stories you can see, to coming in on the one.